Ruvain, should I start now? Yehuda, you can hear me, right? I don't understand it at all. All right. Thank God for grandchildren. I would never understand how all this technology works. Start with my name. It'll be a good spot. I am Yitzchak ben Avraham v'Sarah. And I've been asked to tell you my version of what happened at the Akedah. It's not just that it's my version. I was there. And I know what happened. And Dina, she's so wonderful, my granddaughter. Dina says, if you don't tell your own story, other people tell a story about you. Other people go on and interpret it. And then nobody really knows what happened. Saba, you've got to tell them your story. They read this thing every year at Rosh Hashanah. They think it's about your dad. They think it's about Abraham. But it's your story, Saba. How are they supposed to know unless you tell them? Smart girl, my Dina. Okay. Where do I start? Well, let me start by getting rid of one of the wrong stories about me, okay? The fact that the blindness is somehow connected to the Akedah. There's a version I learned much later that's in the Mishnah that says that when Abraham was about to sacrifice his son, he looked over his son and the tears fell from his eyes at the enormity of it. And I looked up and his tears fell in my eyes. And I don't know. I don't know where they get that stuff from. Dad didn't cry. No, Dad didn't cry. Dad was not exactly an easy father to have. The whole household was not an easy place to grow up. Everyone knew it was a great household of a great man. Abraham, he came from a great distance. He had giant flocks and riches. He signed contracts and agreements with all the local chieftains. People came from all around to listen to him teach about the God of creation that he had a relationship with. Wow. Everybody knew that. And of course, everyone expected that I would carry it on. I had the opportunity. I saw all these great people. Melchizedek, Avi Melech, all these guys. But they came for dinner with the family. Well, Mom was in the women's tent, but I was there and I saw them. They never talked to me. I was a kid, of course, so maybe they wouldn't talk to me. But they had the same impression, of course. I would carry it on. Everyone did. People would say things like, oh, you're Abraham's son. Abraham argued the Sodom and Gomorrah case for the Supreme Court. I bet you're a chip off the old block. Nope. I didn't have Dad's power. I didn't have Dad's fame. Although that didn't bother me so much. I'll tell you what bothered me. What bothered me is I didn't have the relationship with God that my dad had. Oh, Abraham and God, they talked to each other all the time. At least that's what Dad told us. But God never talked to me. No. God never talked with me. God never sent me an angel. Even my sleazy cousin Lot, he had angels visit him. God talked with Hagar. God listened when my brother Ishmael was crying. He heard his tears. Did God ever hear my tears? Yeah, I don't think so. And there was a lot to cry about, frankly, in that home. The dynamics weren't good. It had started way back when. Mom had followed Dad's Lech Lecha vision. We're going to go to Canaan, where the land will be wonderful. And they get there and find there's a famine. Well, that didn't quite work out as advertised. So Dad says, okay, then we'll go on to Egypt. There's food there. Egypt will be fine for us. And they get to Egypt, and Dad pimps Mom to the Pharaoh. That didn't work out too well either, I guess. Then even years later, when the angels came to the house to announce my birth, Mom had to eavesdrop at the edge of Dad's tent to find out what was going on because she didn't trust Dad to tell her exactly what was going on. Poor Mom. She'd been waiting for offspring for years. God had promised her all kinds of things, and He wasn't delivering. Finally, she just got fed up with the whole thing, and she brought in Hagar. That didn't work for her. She gets all upset about Hagar sleeping with Dad and wants him out. And finally, when I arrive, she's just really overprotective. She keeps all dangers away from me. She even keeps all really good potential interactions away from me. When it was time for me to marry, we had to send Eliezer, the family servant, out to get me someone to marry. I was so clueless in social ways. Even that wasn't protective enough. Then Mom decided that she had to toss out Ishmael. Well, she didn't do it on her own, of course. She dragged Abraham into that. Abraham dragged God into that. Everybody got involved. Everybody had to be talked about. Well, what happens to Ishmael? Everybody, of course, but me. Nobody asked me what I thought of losing Ishmael. In fact, no one's ever asked me anything. People have said, ooh, I wonder what Abraham thought about this, having to send away his only son. No one ever says, gee, I wonder what Isaac thought about this. Well, I'll tell you what Isaac thought about this. I hated it. Ishmael's my brother. I loved him. He was my playmate. Ishmael mitzachek. He made me laugh. I loved my brother Ishmael. And suddenly, he vanished. So there I was, in this crazy household, with a mother who hovers over my every move, a missing brother that nobody will talk about, a father who's got his head in the clouds talking with God, a general expectation that I will talk with God, and absolutely no indication that God wants to talk with me. So that's the situation when Dad gets the call one night. Take your son, whom you love, and go someplace strange that I'm going to show you or something. I don't know. I didn't actually hear it. Well, because I never heard anything God had to say. And Abraham didn't tell us much about it. But it sure made a difference because we got up early the next morning. He got up early. He saddled the donkeys. He got the firewood. He got everything. He was like ready to go. Another one, I've heard the rabbis have said, oh yes, the fact that Abraham got up early the next morning, that's an indication of his devotion to God, of his eagerness to fulfill the divine will. Nonsense. That was his eagerness to get away from Mom. And Mom never would have agreed to this. She would have said, no, he's not going. And God saying, yes, he is going. Not a good spot for Dad, because Dad had been told earlier, much earlier, God had said, whatever Sarah tells you, you will do. This was not looking good. But there's a way out, of course. Mom's not exactly a morning person, shall we say. So come daybreak, we got the stuff and we're out of there. And we walk. And we walk. We walk and we walk and we walk all that day. I don't know where we're going. I don't think Dad knows where he's going. He seems to be looking around like God's going to tell him. All that day, camped in a well that night and all the next day. Dad doesn't talk to me. I made small talk with the serving lads who were with us, but Dad didn't say anything. This whole thing is strange. Day 3, still we're on our way to somewhere, and I know God's related to this somehow. Well, it's easy to see that God's involved in this because we got all this sacrifice stuff. We got the wood, we got the rope, we got the fire starter. But here's the weird thing. There's no sheep. I mean, you can't have a sacrifice unless you have a sheep. And Dad's got huge flocks back home. When we left, he could have grabbed some yearling without blemish or something like that. And we just brought it along, but he didn't do that. It's not that he's disorganized. Dad was never disorganized. And so I'm rolling that one around in my head too, along with the strangeness that's going on while Dad is looking for the place. And me, I'm looking for my place in all this. 3 days and it's driving me crazy. I gotta ask Dad something. I gotta start a conversation. So this is a good place to start. I said, Dad, yes, my son, here I am. Which was kind of reassuring, actually, that Hineni, here I am present for you. Because he sure didn't feel like he was being present for me. Well, Dad, here's all the material we need, but where's the sheep for the sacrifice? That's when Dad tipped me off. He didn't say much, but what he said was important. God will provide the lamb for the sacrifice, my son. Like I say, that's all he said. I think he'd been waiting for me to ask that question. I don't know, maybe he'd been waiting for me to ask any question. And this was the answer to it all. So then I had to kind of work it out in my head. God will provide the lamb, my son. God will provide the lamb, my son. God will provide the lamb, my son. There's a lot of ways this could go. What was clear is that God was going to be involved. Whatever was going to happen, we were going to deal with God. We were going to meet God. I was going to meet God after all this time. Dad was taking me to meet God. All right. No, what I realized, God had asked for me. Dad was delivering, but God had asked for me. God had asked for me. Oh, all right. This is what I've been waiting for. This was going to be my moment. When we got to the mountain, I ran up the mountain. I was just so excited. I didn't know what was going to be up there. Maybe God would be standing there holding a sheep. Interesting. Maybe God wouldn't be there, and maybe I would be killed and then I'd come back to life again. That would be pretty interesting too. You know, the Mishnah has that one also. I don't know where they get these things. According to one of the stories in the Mishnah, I died then and came back to life. These rabbis, where do they get their ideas from? Anyway, I go up the mountain, I'm all eager. Dad and I get there and, well, there's no God holding a sheep. So Dad starts to build the altar. I realize what's going on. I realize I've got a choice. I can help him build the altar. I can go along with this. It's going to be me. It's going to be me. Do I want to? Do I not want to? I mean, Dad's had a lot of crazy schemes in the past. They haven't all worked out. This could be just another one of those. And I don't particularly want to die if that's what it's going to take to meet God. And my cooperation, it's critical to all this. Because if I don't cooperate, well, it's just not going to happen. I'm old enough, I'm strong enough. Dad can't do this on his own. I've got to be willing to die. On the other hand, that's how I get to meet God. I do really want to meet God. I do really want to trust into Dad's vision. I want to be able to carry on. I want to do it. Don't want to do it. Do I resist? Do I proceed? I'm in a bind. I'm up there on the mountain, and I'm in a bind. Dina wanted me to give this story a title. It's got a title. The title of my story is Akedah Yitzchak, Isaac in a bind. Because that's what's going on. Anyway, you know what I chose. But I chose. I chose to go along with it. I helped build the altar. I got up on the altar. I helped Dad with the ropes. It took two of us to tie me down so I wouldn't squirm at the last moment. It took two of us because frankly, well, neither of us had ever tied up a person before. But this was it. This was my chance to follow through with Dad's vision and to meet God. And so I got there and I lay on the altar. And Dad picked up the knife. He had this really far away, glazed look in his eye. I guess I probably had a glazed, far away look in my eye too, because I was going to see God. This was my moment of greatness. This was my moment of specialness. And I lay there, and Dad held the knife over me, about to slit my throat, and that goddamn angel ruined everything! Abraham, don't touch the lad. You passed the test. What? Test? He passed the test? What about me? What about my test? But nobody talks to me. Dad never talks to me. God never says a word to me. Still. You know, looking back today, maybe it doesn't matter so much anymore what God did, what God didn't do. Looking back on that moment, I realized it's what I did that really mattered. Because in that bind, I made my choice. I freely chose. And I was liberated. Liberated from the expectations of other people. No. Liberated from my own feelings that I had to satisfy the expectations of other people. Yeah. No, I didn't die. But now I could live. But back then, of course, it felt different. Back then, there's God patting Abraham on the back saying, "Whoa, you didn't withhold your only son." I notice he didn't say, "whom you love," this time. Because, well, let's face it, we know the truth about that one. I was not Dad's choice. I wasn't God's choice. So Dad offers up a ram in my place. God seemed rather satisfied with that. When it was over, he was going to go down, but I just couldn't go down the mountain with Dad. Not with him doing fist pumps all the way down about the success of his latest venture. Dad didn't even see my tears. So I went to somebody else who's had tears. I went to see Ishmael. There's somebody who understands me. Hung around with Ishmael for quite a while. I even missed out on getting to Mom's burial. Oh well. Later on, when it became time to bury Dad, I asked Ishmael to be there with me. I'm really glad that he came. Well, that's the story, you know. I then went on. I married Rivka. I loved her. I had 2 sons like Dad did. I chose one. God chose the other. Out of touch again. And is there a message in all this? I don't know. But I've been thinking about the shofar, because Dina had mentioned that. The shofar that you seem to think is all about Abraham. It's not about Abraham. That ram was a stand-in for me. When you hear the shofar, you think about me. The broken, the wavering, the fractured cry of the shofar. That's my pain. But the strong voice of the shofar, that's my strength, which comes when you do what you know you wish to do. And I've come to understand that I count. I really count. I wasn't number one. There was greatness before me, and if you know the stories, of course, there was dramatic events after me. I just moved the narrative forward in a way, but that's important in this world. It might be that you feel the same way about yourself. That your role has a lot to do with moving the story forward, being a link in a historic chain. If you feel like you're a link in the chain, I felt like I was a link in the chain. Well, we share that bond. Or if you feel that you're being socially pressured to be other than you are, well, I feel that bond too. The shofar. That's for me. The shofar's for you. Or if you are beating yourself up because you think others are more spiritual than you, more activist than you, more creative than you, they're better parents than you are, whatever it is, however you're comparing yourself unfavorably. Yeah, we share that bond as well. And you should hear yourself in the shofar. Maybe. Or maybe not. I mean, really. What do I know? I'm an old man living in confusing times. Oh, my father was certain about what he knew. But I don't know anything. And if that speaks to you, if we share that bond also, well, you can just call that the bonding of Isaac.